Hi everyone, Loretta Roger here. Thanks for joining me today. Today I have a tutorial, a how-to video of how I made this fairly mixed media piece. This is a tag for a swap on creating the Crafty Live. This video will not go live until the tag itself has gone postal to its location. To start, I used my gift tag number 8 from AccuCut Craft. You do need a grand mark machine to cut this tag. However, I do own one and I love it. I cut it twice from medium weight chipboard, and I just used my Tombow Mono multi-glue to glue the pieces down. I used 3 different paper collections, all of them from Graphic 45. The main one I use is actually from the Secret Garden, as well as the one that's got like an Easter theme. One of the things I did do is when I die cut the small bird cages, birdhouses, if you will, I used some mop and glow, which is just stuff you use on your floor. I've had it for years, just to kind of give a little bit of sheen to that birdhouse, and I should say birdcage once again. I will tell you this, it did work somewhat with giving it a sheen. This is actually some scraps of veneer wood that I had in my collection. I did both the bottom piece and the top with that. To make the bird cage itself look a little bit more aged, I used my Distress ink from Ranger in shabby shutters. However, you will see through the process of this video that that color actually did not carry through toward the end of this project. It simply faded back to the natural color of the wood. You can see some variegations in the piece at the end. However, it did not make a difference whatsoever that I used that product. I also used some Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist. My spray bottle didn't work so well, so I just took a brush to do that. And then I also used some Lindy's Starburst in a contrasting color, which was actually a pink, to cover what did become the back of this tag. I did not want it to be perfect, so I did take my time and really made sure that I got good coverage. This was definitely worth the time that I took to do that part. I used that Lindsay Stamp Gang product on the front of this tag as well. The Lindy's gave it a little bit more of an antique feel, a more vintage feel than it previously had. Not shown in the video, I did go back over the edges of this piece with another Sharpie marker so that it gave it some more depth. After adding some dimensional dots, I get my dots from Judy Morrow in the Sticky Stuff store. I used some vintage lace from my collection, and I just simply, actually I stapled that together and used just a piece of wire I had on my desk to gather it up. After that, I used some feathers from my collection and simply used that Tombow Mono multi-glue to glue them in place. I fiddled with it for a while until I got the placement right where I wanted it. Later on, I do decide to go back and add a third feather after I've started putting the flowers in place. These flowers are from Recollections and they are retired. I bought them many years ago when they stopped manufacturing this type of flower, the ones that came in the glass jars. I do have several of them. Everything is held in place mainly with E6000 glue, but until that E6000 glue had a chance to dry, hot glue was employed. I did place that bird cage down, and I used a couple of clamps from my collection just to hold it in place so that it would set up and dry the way I wanted it to. The lace on the top of that bird cage is also from my collection, and I just used my scissors to trim that up. I will also fiddle with it several times during this video to get the placement of those strands exactly where I want them. When you use the Graphic 45 papers, they are just so fantastic. They do a lot of the work for you. I used some of my big brush markers on the large image, the one of the little girl standing over the flowers, to add some more depth to her dress and behind her face, as well as on the flowers. Before I did all that, though, I did sponge the edges with that same Shabby Shutters Distress ink. I didn't think it was dark enough, so I decided to go back and use my sponge that I had dipped in that darker spray ink to just darken that up a little bit. What you don't see on camera are just the layers of glue and of pop dots, things of that nature that I did use to attach that down. The small butterfly is also a butterfly from a piece of the paper collection that I fussy cut out. At first I used some just little enamel dots to make a trail to the butterfly, and you will see that actually not once or twice but several times my hand went right through it and smeared it, so I ended up going back and just adding a line of this enamel to really make that trail stand out. While placing the flowers, I did keep in mind some symmetry. It did end up, in my opinion, to be a little bit heavy towards the right hand side of the piece, but when you stand the piece up to look at it, the final product, I'm very pleased. I actually put more flowers in place and kind of judged that and decided in the end that I really did not need them. They were just overkill. To hold these flowers in place, I did use that same E6000 glue and also the hot glue, once again to remind you that that hot glue just holds everything in place while the E6000 dries. This will actually need to sit overnight to completely dry before it is ready for the mail. When you're working on a project like this, you do need to just take your time and be careful. Hot glue is hot and you can burn your fingers, but you also need to be careful if you are working in an environment that tends to be a little bit closed in. The E6000 has a very strong odor, and you may want to keep that in mind if you are sensitive to that type of thing. One of the small pieces that I have in this collection is these small pieces you see me putting into the tag right now was from a larger piece of that pattern paper that I was using. Once again, it was sponged with the Shabby Shutters, as well as the spray ink that I had in a jar. To give it a little bit more distress, I curl the edges of that, and I do fiddle with it just a little bit to decide where I actually want its final placement to be. In the end, I did like where I put it, but it did create a little bit of a need to fix the ribbon that was on that birdcage one more time, and in order to do that, I just simply folded that over and hot glued it in place. The small bird that's at the very top of this sits atop of a bird cage that I fussy cut out of the paper collection, and it is a punch. I don't know if it's retired or not, but it is from Stampin' Up. I cut it from the pattern paper, sponged the edges, used my dimensional dots, and put that into place just with that Tombow Mono multi-glue. Once again, this was not a very difficult progress or process to do, just time consuming. I used enamel dots for the eye and the bird's wing just to give it a little bit more dimension. Now I'm going to continue to put on some more of those flowers, being careful of the placement so that I don't overdo it. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. The top of that tag was finished with a piece of lace from my collection and two pieces of almost like a wheat looking embellishment, and those are tied around the ribbon and through the ribbon so that it held it in place. Ultimately, it actually acted as the ribbon's closure. I hope that you have enjoyed this process slash tutorial video. I had a lot of fun with this project. I did finish up the back of this by simply applying my business card with some of the Tomo Mama multi-glue, being sure that when I put it down, any glue that oozed out from underneath the edges was cleaned up with a damp baby wipe. Final touches were applied, a little bit more spray glimmer mist, and this was finished. Here you see the finished tag. Still pictures will follow this video, so I hope you will enjoy those. Stay happy and be a blessing. Take care. Thanks for joining me. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye for now.